Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:07 and it's Thursday, and I cannot wait to plow through the next 4 hours with Mercedes Schlapp. What a time to be alive, Mercedes Schlapp, in this news cycle. If you're into news and politics and scandal. Good morning, Mercedes. Are you ready?
Oh, you're making me laugh already.
Yeah.
Coffee.
We've only just begun. And coming up,
Isn't that a song?
Later in this program,
Just begun.
Yes. We are like the Carpenters of political talk radio, aren't we?
Oh yes, we are.
You and I.
Except I can't sing. You can sing. I can't sing.
You can play the drums though.
No,
Coming
I
up,
can't even play the drums.
It's 6:35. Caleb Dalton, Alliance Defending Freedom. He just won a settlement with a Virginia school system that fired a teacher because he refused to use the wrong pronouns when describing a student. 7:05, Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch. 7:35, Luke Rosiak of Daily Wire. 8:05, KT McFarland will join us. And then 8:35, you remember Coach Joe Kennedy who won a Supreme Court case because he was having moments of silence and prayers with his high school football team. Well, he's got a brand new movie, a documentary about himself, Average Joe. We're going to talk about that at 8:35. That's Mercedes Schlapp. I'm Larry O'Connor. And Mercedes, you know me well. But anyone out there who doesn't know me well, I feel like, part of this show is, we try to share our personalities with people. We want to be a part of their lives. We want them to be part of our lives. So I just want to tell you, any given time where I sort of need guidance in my life about how to be a man, how to, embrace my masculinity and the appropriate way for men to behave, I, of course, turn to the advice of the most masculine, virtuous man in our lifetimes.
I've spoken about a lot. There's too much of toxicity, masculine toxicity out there, and we've kind of confused what it means to be a man, what it means to be masculine, where you've got this trope out there that you've got to be tough and, angry and lash out to be strong. It's just the opposite.
Yeah, that's Doug Emhoff, of course, the husband of Kamala Harris. He's lecturing all of us, Mercedes, about toxic masculinity and how this trope out there that you have to behave
shameful.
a certain way. It
Yes.
is, yeah. Of course, Doug Emhoff, as we know, 15 years ago, while married with 2 young children, had an affair with his children's babysitter, got her pregnant, then paid her hush money to get out of everyone's life and to, get rid of the baby in some way. We still don't know exactly the details around that. Mm-hmm. That story, Mercedes, was broken by a reporter at the Daily Mail 2 months ago that Doug Emhoff eventually confirmed was truthful. That same reporter at that same publication yesterday has an incredibly well-sourced story that very Doug Emhoff in 2012, just 12 years ago, while out on a date with the girl that he dated before he married Kamala Harris 3 years later, while dating her, Doug Emhoff allegedly smacked that girlfriend on the sidewalk at the Cannes Film Festival so hard that she was physically spun around by the blow. Now, this report by this reporter at Daily Mail has 3 witnesses who are corroborating this story, two of whom, I should say, actually heard from this alleged victim, Doug Emhoff's old girlfriend, within moments of the alleged assault at the Cannes Film Festival. By the way, the 2 of them were at Cannes Film Festival for a fundraiser for AMFAR. That's a Hollywood AIDS charity, and it was hosted in part by Harvey Weinstein. This event.
Wow.
You can't make this up. You cannot make it up.
No.
So far, no denials from Doug Emhoff or from the Harris campaign. They've gone on radio silence about this story. And we'll get into more details about it, but I've given you the good thumbnail here. Honestly, I think it's atrocious if true. It's, again, incredibly well-sourced, certainly better sourced than the Christine Blasey Ford allegations against Brett Kavanaugh.
That was exactly what I was thinking, is this whole thing that Kamala Harris spent most of her time going after Brett Kavanaugh.
Yes.
When it came to making these horrific accusations of Brett Kavanaugh during his time in high school, okay? Let's be real.
30
While
years
he
before.
drank beer at some point in college.
With no witnesses. Christine Blasey Ford didn't tell anybody about this alleged incident at the time.
Yes, exactly. But then she goes on, under oath and makes these ridiculous allegations. So you have Kamala being the I am a woman,
Right.
hear me roar type of
Believe
moment.
all
And
women,
then
believe all victims.
believe all women, believe all victims. And here she is next to the guy who literally had the affair with a nanny, kind of, paid her off, like you said, not knowing if there was an abortion. They say at first it was always that she had an abortion. Now all of a sudden it's a miscarriage.
Right.
It's so interesting.
Oh,
how
it's
the story
completely
changes.
vague about that. And by the way, the affair with the babysitter, let's just be clear, because we've been told, men have been trained over the last several decades, that a relationship like that is inherently abusive because of the power dynamic.
That's right.
He was her employer. He was a high-powered entertainment lawyer in L.A., and she was a teacher who was trying to make extra money as a babysitter. And he, I'm sorry, by any definition, took advantage of her. But we're not allowed to talk about that, of course, even though
Well,
it's 100%
it gets worse.
true.
And then now, but you know what gets so bad is that MSNBC, they've been trying to build up this character of Doug Emhoff, right?
Yes.
Like Jen Psaki, basically just is doing this softball interview with him. It's so like, oh my goodness, you're talking about masculinity. Mind you, the American people are just barely trying to survive.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes.
The American people are stressed out. They're going through financial woes.
We can't afford
Everything is
gas. We can't afford eggs. We can't
Nothing.
afford hamburger, but
Nothing.
we're going to
And
spend
we're-
our time redefining masculinity by Doug Emhoff. Yes.
Exactly. And everyone needs to be like, oh my goodness, he's going to be a great first gentleman. Isn't this fabulous? And then all of a sudden, the story comes out that now he possibly assaulted this woman,
Yeah.
and now, you know what's crazy to me, Larry? That the story came out now. Like, they ran into, Kamala Harris was VP, the nominee for the VP. This story did not come out in 2020.
Right.
This story comes out now 4 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Republican oppo research is never really that great.
Right.
But I mean, where do you think it's coming from?
That is a really, really good question. I asked myself the same thing. See, this is the world you live in. You've been dealing in political comms world for 20 years now, right? Working in two different White Houses, working for presidential campaigns. When you see a story like this, and I'm sorry, let me check the date. Oh, yes, it's October, right before a presidential election. You see something like this drop and you immediately think, oh, Oppo research. But then, Mercedes, you are wise enough and experienced enough to know that Republicans aren't this good.
No, we're always so far behind. We're always like, what do we do? Oh, no, you guys, you know what it is? Sometimes I think Republicans are so nice. They're like, of course we're never going to go to try to take down the spouse.
Exactly. I
or,
won't. We won't stoop to that level. That's
let's talk policy. No, the Democrats get in the dirt. They're all like, let's figure out if there was a past this or this or this. So to me, it could have been, it could be an inside job, because it could be like the Joe Biden people who are very pissed off that this whole coup happened.
Could be the
Don't you
Biden
think?
people. It could be the Biden people.
Who do you think?
You know what? Let me think about that for a minute, and I'll come back to
Okay.
you. All right? Because I do
Okay.
have some thoughts about it. Where
great.
did this story come from? This very well sourced, pretty well corroborated, yet still an allegation. But there's been no denial of it still, now almost 24 hours later, about allegedly Doug Emhoff physically assaulting his old girlfriend in such a manner that when he slapped her, her whole body spun around. Oh, what a horrific image. Who is behind this story? We'll get to it in a moment. First, though, 5:15.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Important part, an interesting part of how people have talked about your role here is how your role has reshaped the perception of masculinity. And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive spouse. Has that been an evolution for you? And do you think that's part of the role you might play as first gentleman?
It's funny, I've started to think a lot about this. I've always been like this. My dad was like this, and
Doug Emhoff asking, getting asked the tough questions, as you mentioned, Jen Psaki there. You're reshaping masculinity for all of us. Kids, young men out there, please don't model your masculinity off of Doug Emhoff. We can't afford that, we men. And our society and our culture can't afford it. Take a gander at J.D. Vance. Maybe that's a better model for you. Mercedes, I see that. And that other interview where he talked about toxic masculinity, where that was Jonathan Capehart asking him, the prior cut that I played, again, about masculinity. I'm a man. If for some reason I'm thrust into the international stage like Doug Emhoff and I'm asked a question like that, about, you've become a new model for masculinity. What do you think about that? I can't imagine putting myself, what kind of narcissism do you have to embody to say, yes, I am the new model of masculinity? And I'd like to talk about that. I like to humble myself before my Lord. If I was asked that question, I would say, especially, here's the sad thing.
You would humble yourself before the Lord because Meredith would make sure, and I, to make sure that you would humble yourself
Thank you.
before the Lord.
Thank
We'd
you.
be like, Larry, stop it. Like,
that's
we're
right.
not talking about,
you need women in your life to keep you in check like that,
exactly.
by the way.
But Kamala doesn't keep him in check. And look, there is something just strange about, their obsession with power. They're so part of that system, of that, the idea of we have to remain in power at all costs. We don't care if we shift on every single policy.
Yeah.
We don't care if, quote unquote, we try to go to the center. No. It's
about power.
This woman Kamala has no spine. I mean, she's spineless. And then on top of that, you have the husband who this is now going to become a huge distraction it'll become a distraction for the campaign.
Well,
I shouldn't say huge because the mainstream media, the legacy media will not necessarily cover this.
Right.
They are not going to go after and find the woman that apparently was, smacked by.
Yeah, do you think they would if
Emhoff.
this was
Give me
Don
a
Jr.
break.
or J.D. Vance, or if it was Donald Trump, or if it?
No. Yeah.
They'd be all over this story. It would be nonstop, right? Mercy, you're 100% right. I would actually listen. Here's what Doug Emhoff should say, because this is exactly what I'd say. Listen, I have made my mistakes in my life. This is my second marriage. I'm a parent from children who are in a broken home because my first marriage didn't work out. I just try to make it through each day as the best man, best husband, best father that I can be. And I pray to God every morning that I just do better than I did yesterday. Leave it at that. And if you're a young man and you're looking for the husband of a political figure as your role model for masculinity, you're going about it all wrong. Okay, that's not where you should be looking for your role models. But you ask where this came from, because we know Republicans didn't plant this story. Number one, if Republicans were that good, they'd do this all the time, and they don't. Number one. Number two, why now? Why not 4 years ago?
It's always October. Why now?
Why not 4 years ago? Why not when she was first announced as the candidate? Why now? I'll tell you why now. Who serves to benefit from this the most? And if you're thinking Donald Trump, you're not thinking enough about this. I think this is an inside job. I do think this comes from the Democrat Party. You may be right about Biden seeking some sort of vengeance here, but I got to say, I mean, of all the Democrats who serve to benefit from this, Biden is lower on the rung there, because in a weird way, if Kamala does win this election, Biden can claim it as a continuation of his legacy, right?
Yeah.
Yes, if she loses, he gets to do a victory lap and his "I told you so" to her. I'll give you that much. But no, the single individual that is serving or is best served by this story is the same individual who will be most politically handicapped if Kamala Harris wins. It's Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom and the Gavin Newsom wing of the Democrat Party in California. I have to keep reminding everyone, Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris hate each other. They've hated each other back when she was district attorney of San Francisco. He was the mayor of San Francisco, and she tried to steal his thunder. She tried to get all of his headlines. She did not wait her turn. She's not waiting her turn this time either. She leapfrogged over him to get to the White House. And if she wins, that means it's 8 more years before Gavin Newsom can try to run for the White House. And even if she does win, and even if he does go and try 8 years later, you think the American people are going to vote for a 16th year of Democrat control and a third term of a California Democrat? No. Absolutely not. If she wins this election, Gavin Newsom's prospects are pretty much done. But if she loses, Gavin Newsom has a window 4 years from now.
I actually think that's a huge possibility. I do think it could come from the Biden camp too, because I do think that there's a lot of tension between those two camps.
Always
right now.
have been. Yeah.
And the third one is, I think it could be like a Josh Shapiro. He is politically really cunning. He obviously does not want Kamala Harris to win because he's in the same boat Gavin Newsom's in. He wants to run. He wants to run in 4 years.
Yeah.
And those two have they just don't really, she didn't pick him for VP. She's kind of moved on from him. So
is Josh Shapiro
these
evil enough, though?
Is
Josh Shapiro Machiavellian enough? We know Gavin Newsom is. Gavin Newsom is a Batman
Josh Shapiro
supervillain.
is even more than Gavin Newsom.
Really?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Well, we've got more
Anyways,
on
that
this story
we've done
all morning
conspiracy
long.
theory.
Oh, it's not good. First of all, it is a theory, but I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it's completely legitimate and worthy.
We started
of our
with the gossip, okay? That's how bad you and I are. We're like, let's just start with this topic today. I think this would be great. But there's some serious stuff happening in the news that we have to address.
And we will get to it. Well, this is serious, too. I take this incredibly serious. If he's holding himself as the virtuous paragon of masculinity, and he treated his first wife and children and babysitter the way that we know that he did.
Yeah,
and by the way, his unborn child.
Yeah.
And now we find out that he treated the girlfriend, the woman that he dated right before Kamala Harris, in this horrific, disgusting, despicable way. This is an outrage, and I think it's incredibly serious if they're holding him up as some sort of role model for men in this culture. So listen, Doug, you asked to take on that role. Well, you got what you asked for. 524.
Now,
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:36. Good morning. Glad you could start your day with us here on O'Connor and Company. And good morning to all those Mark Levin listeners who got to know me last night as I was filling in for the great one for Rosh Hashanah observances. That's always an honor. Coming up later this morning at 6:35, Caleb Dalton will join us from Alliance Defending Freedom, the big court win settlement that they just had for a teacher who dares to want to properly use pronouns in the classroom. 7:05, Tom Fitt and Judicial Watch. 7:35, Luke Rosiak of Daily Wire. 8:05, KT McFarland. And then at 8:35, Coach Joe Kennedy, you know him. He won that Supreme Court battle for the right to pray at a public high school football game. New movie about him, Average Joe, coming up. We'll talk to him at 8:35. It's Larry O'Connor with Mercedes Schlapp. Good morning, Mercedes.
Good morning, Larry.
What else can we say? But here we go again. Another attempt to inject lawfare into this presidential election and try to influence, if not completely tamper with this election by using our court system against one of the political candidates. That would be Donald Trump. Jack Smith, as you know, this is the special counsel whose appointment is even in question. You know, his case was thrown out in Florida by a federal judge. That was the case over the bogus FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago over so-called classified documents that Donald Trump wasn't supposed to have, even though that's certainly in question at this point. He was thrown out. That case was thrown out because the judge there determined that this special counsel was not properly appointed. There's no congressional oversight. There was no confirmation. He shouldn't even be on the case, but somehow his case in D.C. continues about the events surrounding January 6th. Now, his original case against Donald Trump was sent back by the Supreme Court because they overreached and infringed upon Donald Trump's executive authority as president of the United States and his official acts as president. So the judge in this case, knowing that nothing would happen in a courtroom until well after the election, still demanded that Jack Smith, the special counsel, submit a brief detailing and reassessing the charges against Donald Trump given the Supreme Court's decision. That was submitted last week, and it was under seal. And yesterday, this judge, Judge Chutkan, decided to release this to the public 5 weeks before the election. And again, this is a prosecutor's findings, a prosecutor's case, 165 pages. Nowhere in this document is the defendant allowed to respond. Nowhere in this document is the defendant allowed to claim, no, you're wrong about that, and have his day in court. His day in court won't happen until after the election. This is one of the most outrageous attempts to interfere in our election process that I think any of us have ever seen.
But
this judge should be punished and disbarred by the Supreme Court.
To your point, it's the judge. She unsealed this information that Jack Smith had. Really, I mean, you're talking 30-something days before an election. And of course, this comes on the heels of a dramatically successful vice presidential debate where J.D. Vance just dominated and just was so good against Tim Walz. So like the timing of it is just so it's to be expected. It's what we find in this activist judicial sphere that we live in right now. And I just got to tell you, I mean, I just cannot believe. I mean, Jack Smith will stop at nothing. Judge Chunkin will stop at nothing. And this whole thing is, as it's written in the story, there was this 165-page motion that basically, the way they wrote in this article, showcased Trump and his associates' efforts to dispute the election results, painting the former president and his deputies as desperate and dishonest as at times. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring back this whole J6 argument because this is what the Democrats have run on, Larry, since day one against Donald Trump. Is this threat to democracy? So now this judge is going to come out and unseal this information.
They can't win this election on policy. They can't win it on the economy, cost of living, national security, world affairs, border security, law and order, crime in the streets, up and down the entire list of policies that matter to the American people. So now they're trying to dredge up January 6th and make that the case, which is something that's not even on the radar of most voters in this country, certainly not the voters in the swing states, which are dying because of this Biden-Harris administration. And you said that, you know, this judge and this Jack Smith will stop at nothing. Well, understand something. It's not just the two of them. Jack Smith is appointed by Joe Biden's Justice Department. That's right. This is the Biden-Harris administration. They will stop at nothing when it comes to using the powers that they have in our FBI and Justice Department to punish their political enemies. That's exactly what this is. This is Stalinist behavior. This is Maoist behavior. But the irony in all of it is, despite, you know, the absolute, complete and total, you know, almost softcore porn that you saw on MSNBC. My God, they were so lathered up on MSNBC about this thing last night as they were going line by line through it. It was like a party at Diddy's house. There was so much baby oil flying around on MSNBC. They were so excited about what they had. But honestly, the biggest takeaway, the biggest, most damning thing in this report that we hadn't heard before is this quote about January 6th, the quote which was attributed to Donald Trump by the media saying, make them riot, make them riot. But if you actually read the document, Donald Trump is not the one who allegedly said make them riot. It's an unnamed campaign worker. We don't know who it is. It's been redacted, which is rather insidious, by the way. I know that, you know, the idea is, well, it's redacted so it could protect the person. No, if you redact it, then it could be, it actually basically indicts everybody who worked on that campaign because it could have been anyone, right? But it was misappropriated to Donald Trump by people in the media. That's not what Donald Trump is quoted as saying at all in this document. That's the most damning piece of evidence. It's going nowhere, this thing, and everybody knows it, but it doesn't stop them from putting it out there. And, you know, the only thing I can share with you on this, Mercedes, if we could. We've got about a minute left here. This will take about a minute. On MSNBC last night, Ari Melber's show, they had a roundtable discussing the politics of this and discussing, you know, the political fallout, because this is not a legal issue. This is a political issue, what we're seeing here. And Ari Melber had Peter Navarro, who famously had to serve prison time because he refused to testify before the January 6th committee claiming executive privilege. They also had Ambassador Gordon Sondland. He was an ambassador to the EU under Donald Trump. You know him? You know, after January 6th, he was, you know, he hated what happened on January 6th. He became a witness for the Democrats in the impeachment proceedings. He became Never Trump at the time. He said, that's it. Because of January 6th, I can no longer support Donald Trump. All right. So this guy is, you know, he was made to order for Ari Melber and the MSNBC audience. So now listen to this exchange when he was asked, you know, given this, you're still Never Trump, right? You can't vote for Donald Trump, right? Right?
After that, why was it important for you to say no more Trump because of his January 6th conduct? And do you stand by that?
No, I don't stand by it. And I'll tell you why. I've now lived 4 years under the Biden-Harris policies, and I have to say that those policies are not only becoming an existential threat to our country's way of life, but to our allies as well.
So when you,
and
Ambassador, I'll let you finish, but this is so striking. You said it was a no for me after that, after January 6th.
I did.
And here we are right now.
I did.
And you're saying it's a yes for you.
It is a yes for me.
Ari Melber was almost going to cry.
What?
Yes.
What do you mean?
So here's
it was a no, and now it's a yes.
Here's someone who was in the middle of the Never Trump swamp there after January 6th. He was even a witness for the impeachment, and he said, "I don't care. After 3.5 years of Biden-Harris, we cannot sustain.
I can't do it anymore.
This."
We cannot do this anymore."
That's right, and that's
this
really
is where we
what's
are.
happening here, and that's what's happening in the swing states. This is a desperate. If you're like, if you're outraged over what happened with Jack Smith and Judge Chutkan in this case, good. I want you to be outraged, but don't do it. Don't be stupid mad. Be smart mad, show some wisdom, channel that anger into positive energy, and recognize that the fact that they did this 33 days out shows how desperate they are, shows how damaged they are from that vice presidential debate the day before, shows how they know their back is against the wall and they are desperately grasping at anything that they can do because it ain't working. It ain't working with that never Trumper, and it ain't working for the people in those battleground states who are trying to just get through a day with affordable gas and groceries at the store. Mercedes, the Democrats are acting like they're losers right now. This is how a desperate loser acts.
Come on, after the Tim Walz debate, talk about loser. He was a loser on that debate stage.
That's
that was
right.
so bad.
That's right.
I actually felt sorry for the guy at one point. I was like, geez, just let it. It's got to stop.
Yeah.
I mean,
right, exactly.
JD is
Call the
pouncing
fight.
on him.
Call the fight.
Just say, put the white flag up. I can't debate.
I think J.D. Vance felt sorry for him, too. I did not feel sorry for him because I know how he acted
they're horrible.
against people during the pandemic and during the Black Lives Matter riots and all of the things. In his heart, he's just a craven politician. But you're right. Your instinct is to feel bad for him, and then you realize who he is.
Mark Levin, weeknights from 6 till 9.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
It's 5:49 now, and we've got an update on the status of President Jimmy Carter. As you know, he celebrated his 100th birthday here, and that's quite an achievement. I guess if you're a complete and total failure as a one-term president, it takes the stress off of your older years, and it allows you to. I guess Joe Biden's going to make it to his 100th birthday too, since he had a complete and total utter failure of a presidency, and he's going to be a one-termer as well. That said, Jimmy Carter, as you know, turned 100, and his family put out a statement at the time saying that his one wish right now is to live long enough to vote for Kamala Harris. They used his 100th birthday as this political tool, as this political device to advance the narrative for Kamala Harris, and which, by the way, I don't know if that helps, by the way.
Darling, they're desperate.
They are.
Okay?
They are 100%
They're bringing
desperate.
out. But remember, dead people do vote in these elections.
That's right.
I mean, Larry.
This is Georgia, after all. We saw what happened in Fulton County. Right, that's what I was thinking. It's like he can't put in an absentee ballot,
Yeah.
So
wait, no. Do you imagine? They're like voting for him. They're like, okay, we're going to check the box now, and we'll go deliver the vote.
Well, it's funny you should say that. Because they put out, when they put out this statement on his 100th birthday, they also put out a picture of him looking, certainly incredibly gaunt and frail in a wheelchair, but he was smiling and his eyes seemed engaged and was right. So that was the press release that went out. Then yesterday they released a video of him. There was some sort of, it looked like an outdoor family gathering in the backyard of their home.
Yeah.
And there's this video of Jimmy Carter, and I got to tell you, I mean, my heart.
It was so depressing.
It is so sad. And I was angry that they put this video out because, I mean, look at him. He looks like a corpse that they have willed. His mouth is gaping open. He cannot move his head or neck. I don't even know if he is alive or awake.
No,
in
I'll
this
tell
video.
you, I would never do that to a loved one like
it's
this.
It's exploitation.
So horrible. Like, it just is so sad. I mean, look, here's the deal. We've always talked about that when we're all old, we're going to all live together in like a nursing home type of scenario. I think I think, Meredith definitely would be the youngest one out of all of us.
Yes, that's true.
That means that when you and I turn 100.
We're counting on Meredith to be pushing us around because she'll only be 80-something, right?
Schlapp, well, I don't know. I mean, Schlapp already told me, he's like, just bury me out at the farm and just call it a day. But here's the deal. If we're 100 years old, you and I, and we look like that, and they decide to take a video of us looking like that, and they put that out, oh my goodness, I'll be so mad.
It's so funny you should say this.
I'll be so mad when I go to heaven.
I sent this to my children. And I said, don't you dare do this to me. Don't you dare use me when he's been in,
as a prop.
He's been in hospice for over a year now, right?
I know.
And so and so to use
but
this
which
video.
kid thought this was a good idea?
Well, they only have
which
one.
PR person thought
Amy.
it was a good idea? Oh, they have one.
It's got to be Amy.
Come on. Who thought this was a good idea?
No,
it's like,
horrible.
let's put out my almost dead father video out.
Right.
And say he wants to vote for Kamala. He doesn't want to die until he votes for Kamala Harris.
It's specifically to try to get votes for Kamala Harris in the state of Georgia. And
honey, this is not working. I'm telling you, it's not working.
When you need
People
it, listen. Let's be clear. The Harris campaign is used to wheeling out nearly dead people to boost their political career. I mean, look at the commander in chief. After all, I mean, I will say this about this video because we make fun of the Joe Biden thing and Weekend at Bernie's and all that stuff. I mean, comparatively speaking, you have to say Joe Biden's looking pretty good compared to Jimmy Carter.
Well, it's just Joe Biden has more Botox and has a fake tan. I mean, let's be real.
He's been spending more time trying to,
and he's on the beach all the time. I mean, let me tell you, when you go to the beach all the time, that is so good for your skin, and you get, the vitamin D and vitamin E and all that stuff.
I think it depends.
But we have
if you're
no
prone
idea
to skin cancer, you might not want to do
We
that.
have no idea who's running the White House. Right? We have no idea.
That's true. Exactly. I mean, at least the difference is that Jimmy Carter hasn't been anywhere near the White House in 40 years now. And listen, as you look at this, I feel sorry. We're making fun a little bit just because, we have gallows humor here and nothing is beneath us to mock. It's awful what they're doing, trying to politicize this man's dying days. He obviously is not cognizant and aware of what they're doing to him. I will say this about Jimmy Carter. He's a Naval Academy graduate, so my heart always has a soft spot for them. And if he weren't such a failed president, then we wouldn't have gotten Ronald Reagan. So there's that. I mean,
we're going in the right track. If
that's
if
right.
it wasn't a failed presidency for Biden, we wouldn't be getting Donald Trump in November, right?
Which we will if we keep our eye on the prize. It's 5:54.